As Ross said, I made a movie called You and Me. I spent 4 years inside the guts of the United Nations, and nothing sickened me more than what I found there. The perversity of what was in that place really would disgust you to no end. But besides what you see on the surface level that most people see, when we really get down to it, there's some horrible things that go on. You know, Ben Gurion famously said, shmum, right? Basically saying which is the Hebrew way of saying United Nations, and shmum, essentially saying this is an irrelevant organization, and we shouldn't have to worry about it. With all due respect to the Prime Minister, he was dead wrong. This is an organization which is damaging to the state of Israel, damaging to the United States, and damaging to the West. And we have to actively fight against it and not try to ignore it as if it doesn't exist, or as if what it does won't hurt us, because in fact it does repeatedly. When it comes to the state of Israel, we see the damage in a number of different ways. First of all, we see it diplomatically. You know, the Goldstone report, we all know it as a sham that it was, right? Even Goldstone himself, Judge Goldstone, knows what kind of sham it was. But the truth is, the rest of the world doesn't know that. The rest of the world, the third world, for instance, they take it as, you know, no pun intended, the gold standard of diplomacy. Even the halls of Europe today, when Israel has to go in and talk about what's going on to Palestinians, European diplomats waive the Goldstone report and say, wait a second, why should I take what you're saying at face value? You obviously kill civilians indiscriminately. You bomb cities without any regard to the death of civilians. And they look at that and they say, this is what Israel's really about. So we have to actively fight against it on the diplomatic front as well. But I think a lot of people also don't understand what kind of damage on the military front it does for Israel. I'll give you a couple of examples. So if you look at the northern border of Israel, obviously there was the war against Lebanon. A treaty was signed, and Israel allowed UNIFIL, which is the UN peacekeepers on the northern border of Israel and the border of Syria, ostensibly there to stop Hezbollah from rearming itself because it, shot all the missiles at the north of Israel. And what the situation Israel finds itself in today is that its drones, its aircraft, its satellites sit and watch arms stream over the border from Syria into Lebanon, and they can't do anything about it because the UN won't allow them. It's the UN's job to stop the missiles. They watch them come in, and now Hezbollah is rearmed beyond what they were armed at before the war. That's the situation we find ourselves in. If you look a little farther afield to Iran, right? Iran's a big topic of discussion today. Clearly trying to wipe Israel off the map, clearly trying to establish, nuclear weapons. The IAEA does nothing. The most charitable thing you can say about the IAEA is that they're idiots. And the darker way of looking at it, and there's some truth to this as well, is that a lot of people who reside and work in the IAEA really believe that there should be some nuclear balance in the Middle East. And that if Israel has nuclear weapons, why shouldn't Iran have nuclear weapons? And that's the situation Israel finds itself in when facing the United Nations. And we're here talking about the joke of Durban 3. Well, Durban 1, as you all know, ostensibly was supposed to be there to fight against racism and intolerance around the world. But we know what happened in that place. It became an orgy of anti-Semitism, an orgy of hate against the United States and the West, and obviously an orgy of hate against Israel. And then since that worked out so well, they said, hey, let's do Durban 2. So Durban 2 took place in Geneva. And I was there. A lot of you people may have been there. And it was, and who's the keynote speaker? Mahmoud Ahmadinejad kicked off that conference. I like the audience participation in that. I'll use the name sparingly. I was there. I was actually, and in the movie you'll see it when by the way, the movie's coming out in a couple months. If you go to the website, theunmovie.com, you can see what we're doing. Go to our Facebook page. I was there. I actually was able to take control of the podium in front of the entire conference and speak truth to power and tell them what they needed to hear before security threw me off, which I don't believe will be happening here, right? All right, good. I get a mic, I get nervous these days. And now we have Durban 3, which is going to end up being the same thing. Thank God, a lot of European nations, and even in some non-European nations, we worked hard, and we were able to get a lot of these people to boycott Durban 3, which is really progress, and we should understand there has been some progress made. Just yesterday, I was filming down here. So I'm doing a bit for the Sean Hannity show on Fox News, which they're broadcasting on Friday or Monday, something like that. And we're doing a funny bit, and I was interviewing people who work in the United Nations. And I was asking them, I said, listen, do you guys have a problem with Ahmadinejad speaking here? I mean, aren't you embarrassed by having your, utopian institution sullied by that? And they all looked at me like I was crazy. No, we're not embarrassed. He should speak here. And I said, well, because he's a member state like anybody else. I said, let me ask you a question. What if Hitler's Germany was a member of the UN? Could he speak here? To a man. Absolutely. That's the beauty of the United Nations. Stalin, I asked? No question about it. This is the mentality we're dealing with. So then I spoke with Ban Ki-moon's spokesperson on camera. And I said, listen, Ahmadinejad is speaking here. Ahmadinejad is speaking here. And I said, listen, clearly, you allow him to speak. That's the bizarre mechanics of this place. But clearly, we both understand what they stand for, right? We know that Iran is the world's greatest state sponsor of terror. And he paused, he looked at me, and he said, I wouldn't say that. I said, what? Then he goes, in fact, Iran is a victim of terror. This is not a joke, this is on camera. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. He said, no, we have to get the world together to fight against terrorism. Then I said, well, I mean, do you have an issue? I mean, you do understand they beat women in the streets. You do understand that they stone women. Iran is on the Commission for the Status of Women. That's like having Casey Anthony as the head of UNICEF. Too soon to joke about that? So he looked at me again and said, no, everybody's working toward the same goal. To have these people represent these organizations, this is how we get them to change their behavior. As if Iran has changed its behavior 1 ounce since the 1979 revolution. This is the mentality that we're dealing with. They live in a bizarro world. They live in a place where Newtonian physics doesn't hold true. They live in a parallel universe where east is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet between our world, which makes sense, where right is wrong, where right is right and wrong is wrong, and their world, where right is wrong and wrong is right. This is an organization that has it completely backwards. We need to fight against it. And I'll leave you with one last thing, which is, and Roz asked me specifically to say, what can you guys do? You guys should know a couple of things. First of all, the United States spends $8 billion a year on this place. And by the way, in the face of this global recession that we've been in, right, in a place where we're trying to make significant cuts because we're trying to balance our budget, the UN demanded we pay 25% more this year than last year. That's called chutzpah, true chutzpah. But the good news is, because we spend that kind of money, we have leverage if we want to use it. Now, we haven't used it yet. The truth is, in the entire country, one body controls the purse strings of the United States, and that's Congress. And the good thing for us is that Congress listens to their constituents. And you guys may think that calling your congressman, who am I? I'm a teenager, I'm some punk college kid. They're not going to listen to me. The truth is, every phone call you make to your congressman or senator is not thrown out in the ether somewhere. It's cataloged, it's categorized, and it's given a weight. They assume that every phone call or email or letter they get, X amount of people in their constituency believe the same thing. Those things matter. Tell them to defund the UN, and I'm telling you, we'll move this place into their direction. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a great day.
Thank you, Ami. You want to introduce your little girl here?
This is Adina. She's 10 years old, and actually we were going to do a bit for the Sean Hannity show. Are you smarter than my 5th grader? And we were asking questions, talking about, well, is Iran evil? Is Iran evil?
Yes.
So they couldn't get that one right. Should any country be a member of the UN if you want to destroy another member of the UN?
No.
They didn't get that one either. So they were 0 for 2. Now let me ask you a question. Do you think it's important to speak with evil and know where they're coming from and have a dialogue with them, or should we fight them?
Fight them.
3 for 3. They were 0 for 3. My daughter's smart. Thanks.
Wait, one more. Are you proud of your daddy?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ami. Thank you. And now I would like to here's an